supposedly, from what I've heard, is seeking to limit aid to Ukraine, stop aid to Ukraine. Germany has promised to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, but budget clashes are forcing Berlin to cut aid. Will it start saying no to Kyiv? Will it start saying no to Kyiv at this very difficult time? Germany cutting aid to Ukraine. As we know, Ukraine is doing well in Kursk, but let us not forget that the situation in Donetsk is still extremely, extremely difficult. And what's more, Ukraine needs all the help that it gets. It keeps being dependent on aid. Just because Ukraine is doing well in one part of the war theater, it doesn't mean that suddenly it's okay without aid, that it's okay without additional support, incoming support. It's the opposite. Ukraine needs more support than ever to sort of be able to first push the momentum in Kursk, and second to be able to hold out in Donetsk, which is not going well, the Donetsk situation. So let us see this article. Germany wants to limit aid to Ukraine. By 2026, Germany aims to reduce its aid to Ukraine, relying on sources other than the federal budget. Capital gains from frozen Russian assets could be one such source, which at least a few different sort of countries have decided to use those frozen Russian assets. Like the Czech Republic has sort of said that they would start buying munition for Ukraine using the frozen assets. So maybe that could be a viable alternative for Germany as well, to actually not stop aid. It came as a shock to Ukraine and to all those who want to support Kyiv unconditionally. The German government apparently wants to end financial aid for military aid to Ukraine from the federal budget after next year and instead tap into an international pod. It's very telling, by the way, considering that much smaller countries with much smaller budgets have dedicated relatively much bigger amounts of their GDP to helping Ukraine, especially those countries that are, well, very near Ukraine. You know, those countries that can feel on their necks the breath of Russia and what it would mean for Ukraine not to succeed for those countries. Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, those countries have been pretty active in aiding Ukraine in one way or the other, dedicating GDP, equipment, etc., etc. And Germany, while it has admittedly helped quite a lot, compared to its capabilities, I would say that it could do a lot more. And now it's looking to reduce the aid, cut the aid. It's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous from my perspective. The reason for this is the extremely difficult budgetary situation in which the governing coalition of the center-left Social Democratic Party, SPD, the Green Party, and the neoliberal Free Democratic Party, FDP, is struggling to make ends meet. Finance Minister Christian Lindner wrote in a letter to Defense Minister Boris Pistorius and Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock that new measures involving payment obligations may only be agreed upon if financing has been secured. The German government has allocated 7.5 billion, 8.3 billion in the 2024 budget for Ukraine, and another 4 billion euro, $4.4 billion for 2025. After that, no further money will be earmarked for Ukraine in Germany's federal budget. So at least 2024 and 2025 seems to be secure. But you know what? I'm not happy about this. Long term, um, long term aid should be secured because at the end of the day, we don't know when this war will end. Worst case scenarios, we might be see it going into 2026. We just don't know. We cannot predict the future. So it's best to have a guarantee for long term aid and have the war end sooner rather than have the war sort of last longer and suddenly countries being like, oh, you know what? We're actually starting to cut aid now because we've not been prepared to grant aid for so long, as seems to be the case for Germany. Uh, at that point, the money is expected to come from a new source agreed upon by the representatives of the seven major Western industrialized nations, the G7, in June. At their summit meeting, they declared that by the end of the year, around $55 billion is supposed to have been raised in additional funds, not as a substitute for national contributions. The interest for these loans are to be paid for by, among other things, interest earnings from frozen Russian assets. However, it is still unclear if and when such revenues will accrue, how much they will be, and whether they can be used in this manner. International negotiations on this are ongoing. The G7 had explicitly stated that these funds were not going to substitute national contributions to Ukraine's struggle. Well, I guess in case of Germany, that does not seem to be the case anymore. Criticism from all sides. Ukraine's ambassador to Germany, Alexei Makeyev, was quick to issue an urgent warning to the German government against cutting financial support to his country. Cutting military aid to Ukraine means jeopardizing Europe's security, he wrote on X. That would be fatal and must be avoided. The funds are there. It's a question of political will. I have to agree here. This is ridiculous. Criticism showered down on the government. Representatives of the largest opposition party, the conservative Christian Democratic Union, accused the German government of abandoning Ukraine. That's not an unfair accusation, actually. The opposition party is also in favor of using Russian assets not as substitute for German funds, but in addition to them. It is a sad affair when I have to be in agreement with the Christian Democratic Union. What a sad state of affairs when that is the party that I have to find myself in agreement with on something. Critical voices are even coming from within the governing coalition. Michel Roth, SPD, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Bundestag, said that Germany cannot make its support dependent on the budget situation. We must not sacrifice the fate of Ukraine on the altar of debt break. He said in reference to a provision in the German constitution limiting public debt. Green Party co-leader Omid Nouripur said in an interview with public broadcaster ARD, "This is not a good signal, certainly not for Ukraine and certainly not for our partner states, which are all involved." And I'd hate for this sort of thing to set a precedent for other countries to be like, hey, if Germany did it, I guess we can do that too. I guess we'll also say that we will limit aid from our budget and we'll just say we'll help from other sources. I don't know. I don't think this is a good precedent to set to begin with. Because if Germany does it, who's to say that other countries won't as well? Marie Agnes Strack-Zimmermann from the FDP, one of the most vehement supporters of military and financial aid to Ukraine and chair of the Defense Committee in the European Parliament, echoed the same sentiment, but she also held her partners accountable. She wrote on X that aid to Ukraine still needs to be stepped up, but this is only possible together with our European partners, from whom we are demanding just as much commitment as before. Fear ahead of the state elections. The German government wants to limit aid to Ukraine not only because of the tight budget in September. State elections will be held in 3 eastern German states: Saxony, Thuringia, and Brandenburg. Polls predict good results for the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD. God, that basically Nazi-esque party. And the populist Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, BSW, who want to end support for Ukraine and are in favor of reconciliation with Russia. So Nazis and fascists that want to buddy up with Russia and sell out Ukraine, basically, to say it in more direct terms. After the initial uproar over cutting aid to Ukraine, the German government is now trying to mitigate the damage. The Chancellor will keep his word that support for Ukraine will continue for as long as necessary, and that no one, especially not the Russian president, can count on us letting up, said government spokesman Wolfgang Büchner. However, he did not deny that a shift from the federal budget to international sources was being considered. So there we are. Elections, budgetary concerns, all those things will lead to Ukraine possibly being thrown under the bus, which we'll see. And we'll see if it will not create sort of this thing when other countries will be like, hey, why should we aid Ukraine from our budget when we can also just start looking for alternative sources, which will, of course, make everything probably longer because people will squabble about those like alternative sources. So procuring the aid will be still take longer, and then agreeing to it and then transferring the aid to, oh god, I don't know. I can only see this ending badly personally, but we'll see.